Well, good afternoon and welcome to another session of this fantastic day organised by the UK Tech Cluster Group. I'm just going to switch some slides which I'll talk through before introducing some colleagues, so please bear with me just a second. There we go. So hopefully everybody should be able to see that. So this session is all about connecting corporates and SMEs for open innovation. My name is John Connolly. I'm Managing Director of C40I, which is the Centre for Digital Innovation based up in Hull. As we step through these slides, they won't take too long to go through. But if you double click on the picture of the slides on the screen at the moment, hopefully that should bring up those slides full screen without you having to look at me as we go through this session. So the first thing I wanted to do is say thank you very much. Thank you to everybody that's come today. Thank you very much for coming along to this session. It's great to have everyone here. But a special big thanks to all the colleagues at the UK Tech Cluster Group. The UK Tech Cluster Group is a fantastic organisation. It's been a tremendous support to what we're doing in Hull. And it's just been brilliant to learn from other individuals and other organisations across the country. So things to learn from them, things that we want to look to imitate over here in Hull. So it's been great. You know, there's been a small core of people that have put a huge amount of time in today, so thank you to them. I'm going to run through just a few slides to kick us off with. So I'm going to give a little bit of background to C40I and what it is and why we bring traditional businesses together with tech companies. And I'm going to hand over to one of the members of C40I who runs a fantastic business here at C40I, and he can tell you a little bit more about how they've grown their business through open innovation and through working with corporates. And then we'll break some questions at the end. So C40I, the Centre for Digital Innovation, we do two things. We help tech companies grow and we help traditional businesses innovate. Our model is that we have a fantastic community of people, independent developers, designers, techies, innovators, and we build and grow that community, and we try and get them to link together with traditional businesses based around us locally. That helps those traditional businesses tap into skills and expertise, much of which it didn't know it needed, and even if it did know it needed, it wouldn't know where to find it. It also helps that tech community access supply chains that it could only ever dream of in any normal environment that would take them years to do. And at the back of that, you get some fantastic, exciting economic growth with tech startups and scale-ups being developed. We're privately owned and run, and so this is it's a slightly different model from other places. We were founded about almost 7 years ago now, and we moved into a custom building in December 2015, which is now home across our campus, which has grown to about 350 people on a day-by-day basis and a wider network of about 1,000 people on a week-by-week basis. But clearly that's obviously dipped a little bit over the last few months. And the next phase of our campus here in Hull, a £15 million campus, opens in September. And we're super excited about a project up in Northallerton where we're partnering with some fantastic people, Hamilton Council, on a redevelopment of a fantastic Victorian prison where we'll be having a C40I Northallerton focused on agri-tech and food processing. So there's lots of stories about businesses growing and creating jobs, and central to that here in our model at C40I is that growth is stimulated by getting tech companies to work with traditional organisations. And I guess with all those businesses that we've got within C40I, what are these people doing? What is it about what they're doing that makes them interesting and attractive to corporate organisations? We've got those big corporates. We've got people like PwC coming along and saying, look, here are our clients. Here are our top 30 businesses across the north of England. Can you help make their businesses grow by using technology more effectively? We've got people like Siemens saying, you know, we need ultra reliable connected systems developed to capture real-time information about how we manufacture wind turbine blades. We've got companies like GSK saying, can you help us with our product development work by understanding the fast tech world of startups and scale-ups. We've got a big, grown from Hull, a company called Reckitt Benckiser, or RB. If you don't know them, you'll certainly know some of their brands, saying, here are our leading brands. Can you help work with us to engage with consumers and add value through connecting to the internet? And then people like Nestle saying, we've got 1,000 lorry yards and warehouses all around the world. How do we operate them more effectively using technology? We've got boiler companies saying, a local company called Ideal Boilers, Europe's second largest boiler manufacturer, now owned by Groupe Atlantique. What do we do about Tado, Nest, and all these other kind of disruptive businesses? What do we do about them, and where do we take our business? And I guess the big question at the heart of that, and the big question of how we can grow and scale in different parts of the country in different areas is why us? Why are a bunch of fantastic businesses coming to a bunch of geeks in the middle of the hole to try and get them to solve these problems? You've got companies like Siemens, which has got the best engineering talent in the world. Companies like Reckitt Benckiser, they've got buildings full of PhDs. PwCs, they've got great business advisors. What is it about tech incubators and tech hubs all around the country that those businesses can learn from? Well, we would say that those businesses have got two challenges. Firstly, those businesses have got an innovation challenge. And secondly, they've got a skills challenge. The first challenge around that innovation challenge is the way that those businesses, those big, steady, old, slow tech businesses innovate is in slow tech ways. So IT salesperson comes along and says, you need to buy this new beige box. If you don't buy this beige box, bad stuff's going to happen. And so these big businesses innovate in slow incremental steps. And those businesses are looking at the fast tech world of startups and scale-ups and saying, what is it that we can learn from them? Their tools, their culture, their technology stack, the way they work. What is it that we can learn from, both to protect against us being disrupted, but also to grow our existing business? They're looking at the likes of Airbnbs and the Ubers and the WhatsApps and the well-rehearsed arguments about how these businesses have grown and disrupted, and saying, what do we do about those businesses? What is it that we can learn from them? And more recently, they're looking at businesses based right in C40I. This is a fantastic business run by two great founders, which helps you track mental health well-being. So it's one of the big corporates who they're now working with simply couldn't believe that a business could start, have a product developed, prototyped, hardware built within about 6 months in a way that it would take them 6 years or so to do. So there's a real challenge around innovation. The next challenge is around skills, and this is where some of the tech businesses you'll hear from in a bit come into that. When we talk about skills, the skills challenge, we often talk about kind of people in schools learning the right sort of things, but there's a different skills challenge that we see as well in traditional businesses. If we look at the CTO of 2020, it's a very, very difficult role to fulfill. We did an exercise with Nestle, trying to help them understand what that CTO capability would look like for their organization. And to start with, we rolled the clock back and said, well, look, if you were the CTO, the Chief Technology Officer of Nestle in their warehousing distribution part of their business 10 years ago, what sort of stuff would you need to know? That person would probably need to know a bit about ERP, a bit about process control systems, a little bit about databases, a little bit about printing. And so if I was the CTO of that business, I'd just about be able to understand just about enough of most of those things in order to be able to fulfill and deliver that role. The problem is it's not 2010, it's now 2020. And at 2020, the CTO is looking, that slide says 2010, but it should say 2020. The CTO of 2020 is looking at different things. They're saying, how do we optimize space and resource utilization in our warehouse? Well, that could be machine learning. How do we we move water around, baby food, all that kind of stuff? How do we ensure the integrity of that supply chain? How do we make sure there's a perfect ledger of interaction? Well, that could be blockchain. How do we capture data around pallets and people and operations? How do we capture all that stuff that we're missing? Well, that could be IoT. Once we've got huge amounts of data, how do we stick it up at the cloud, in the cloud, and manage it and manipulate it and learn things from it? And when we've got that, how could we simulate new environments and training and optimize different routes? And what we suddenly see is each one of those areas is deeply, deeply specialized. Things that would make enormous impacts to traditional businesses require deep skills that it's simply impossible to expect a CTO of an organization to understand. The reason for that is, I just think over the last 2 years that tech has become deeply specialist and deeply niche. There's just been too much information and too much technology to be contained and even learned in slow tech companies. And what we've seen is that technology, knowledge and experience hasn't necessarily moved into big consulting companies. It's buried in the brains of small, niche, specialist tech companies, the sorts of companies that are buried away in tech incubators and tech hubs all around this country. And so the CTO capability, the kind of the heart of how do you help those traditional organizations innovate, is looking at that role and saying, well, how do you tap into skills and expertise in tech hubs and tech incubators to try and access those skills? And that's basically at the heart of what we do here at C40I. We're trying to grow fantastic tech businesses by working together with traditional organizations. One of the questions that came up in an earlier session is about what's the magic formula to it. Just to say, there are no shortcuts. This is long-term work with traditional organizations and tech companies, basically trying to help the tech companies be more commercial and trying to help the traditional businesses be better buyers of those technology services. We've got a fantastic business based in C40I called Source. We're about to hear from a guy called Matt Weldon, who's actually the guy on the left of that picture. And so I will exit my slides and I'll hand over to Matt to tell you all about the exciting stuff that they're doing. So Matt, hopefully you should be able to join right now.
Thank you, John. Can you hear me?
There we go, Matt. Fantastic. I'll hand over to you. Yeah, welcome. Appreciate you giving up your time. So
no, thanks a lot, John. Thanks. So as John said, I'm Matt Weldon, MD of Source, a software development consultancy based here in Hull at the C40I. We were founded about 4 years ago now at the C40I as freelancers and independent contractors, focusing on delivering small-scale software for a number of different companies and clients. We joined forces really because we saw that there was a great amount of potential with some of the relationships that we're brewing here in Hull to work with larger corporates and bring that kind of that startup mentality really to those kinds of businesses and really deliver the kinds of software that they should be seeing throughout their businesses in 2020 and less so some of the older technology. So over the past few years, we've worked with a number of different companies, Siemens Gamesa, as John kind of alluded to, with the relationship there at C40I, Ideal Boilers, Nestle, and their logistics partner XPO as well. And again, throughout that whole period of time, we've really just aimed to bring that startup mentality to those projects and to those clients and help them to think differently about the way they deliver technology solutions in the present day. It's not always easy because I think that there's always been a case of needing to change the way that we communicate with each other. Obviously, startups have a very kind of lean and agile sensibility to them. The idea that you move fast and you pivot as needed, and we really aim to bring that to those projects and help those organizations to embrace that mentality, which ultimately ends up in better solutions. So there's a bit of an example of one of the projects we've done recently. Back in 2018, Nestle started to talk to John and his team about a issue they had where they were actually trying to find yard management solutions for one of their large distribution centres down in the Midlands. They'd spent quite a while, I think, looking around at off-the-shelf solutions and trying to find something that would be the perfect fit for the problem they were trying to solve. And actually, software in large organizations just doesn't work that way. They found that actually they could buy something off the shelf, but they'd still spend 6 months configuring it and making it fit for purpose. So at that point, we came in and started to talk to them about how they can think differently about these projects, how they can maybe adopt a different approach, and instead of it becoming an IT project, it actually becomes a project that's owned by the business unit that will end up having to use that software. So we started down a road of going through a number of meetings with them to really get to the bottom of what it is that they wanted to achieve and what the highest value was for them. It really changed the way that they thought about software and tech, because instead of becoming a list of features that you have to look at through some kind of procurement exercise, actually we embedded their logistics team right within our development team throughout the 9 months of the project to bring all of their expertise and help us as the techies to really extract all of that expertise and deliver a solution that's bespoke to them, that works perfectly well for them in their own sites, and also the sites that are owned and run by their logistics partners. And throughout all of that process, there's just been a lot of learning, really, about trying to just bridge that gap between the large organizations and ourselves, a startup essentially, changing the terminology slightly, going from say Prince 2 in the project management space to agile with ourselves, and getting into the mindset that actually we don't need to draw up a large specification at the start of a project and then expect to deliver that in 18 months' time. Software is fluid, and if anything, the last few months have taught us that actually everything's subject to change, and so project management should adopt that as well. So we worked with them, and we worked with them to quickly deliver prototypes to the business to test out assumptions, and actually within 9 months we delivered a fully operational yard management system that now is operational in 2 of their largest sites in the UK, and actually it's brought about quite a lot of scrutiny from the wider business now, because they're looking at what we've done, and they said, well, how have you been able to achieve that? This seems unrealistic, and it's about focusing on the actual value of the end user and the value that the software provides, and not trying to look at it as right, we need to implement a system, and again, all of that and that speed and that agility has really come about because we work closely and collaboratively with the larger organization. That 2 organizations, Source and Nestle, couldn't be more different. Where the size and scale of the operation, we're now 30 people. They've got thousands and thousands of people worldwide, but actually the teams there that are focused on delivering these solutions and solving these problems are no different. We're all coming to the table to think about a problem and work out a solution as quickly as possible. John mentioned some of the startups, Uber, Airbnb, and the like. These are all companies that are built off the backs of larger traditional organizations and industries, because a group of people came together and decided that they'd disrupt it. Really, the approach we tried to take is actually that disruption should come from the large organizations themselves initially, by fixing these things internally and working from there. So yeah, I think in terms of impact on the larger organizations, that we've seen a huge shift in the way that they think about solving problems, that the way that they think about implementing technology, that we don't necessarily have to implement a system or a CRM or something like that for its own sake, but actually it's there to solve a real world problem. So they've been able to change process, change mindset, and then ultimately deliver a much faster pace, and adapt to things that we've seen over the past few months. So as we've been rolling out over the past couple of months, not the best time to be rolling out a huge logistics system perhaps, but actually we found that we've had feedback from people on site as they've been testing this and using this, that we've had ideas from people that actually are now working in a more socially distant environment than they used to. So how can we take that feedback, think about it, use off-the-shelf technologies to then provide something within a week or 2 weeks to solve a core problem within the system? I think that typically that they've been used to situations where perhaps these things take a lot longer, and I suppose it's a mixture between traditional software being a lot more what we'd call waterfall in its approach, but also procurement and the way that the large organizations look to take on these technologies, think about the product and the value that they're getting. It's about shifting it from a product to actually what's the value that we now get, and the impact from the Source side as well. I mean, a small organization like ourselves to be working with a large multinational like Nestle, it's been a great boost for the team. We've seen tremendous team growth as we've progressed, and working with the larger corporates has meant that we've been able to get to this point without any external investment, which again, I think if these larger organizations were looking to the larger consultancies, Accenture and the like, it perhaps stifles that slightly. And then the empowerment as well within the team, able to, we're now running these systems in these large scale environments. I think, yeah, it's a win-win all told. And I think that you can only see how everybody now involved in that project can start to look at these software delivery solutions slightly differently, and look at technology slightly differently, and try to maybe just take a little bit of a different approach when it comes to solving things around the office.
Fantastic, thank you, Matt. I've just if anybody's there are quite a few people watching, so if you do have questions, please do stick them in the chat window. We'll go through them. We've been running an innovation project at C40i, which literally started on the day of lockdown with Walgreen Boots. So Boots being the big chemist, which wasn't great timing. But Matt, that's something that you've been involved with, isn't it? And Jenny's asked a question: how might COVID recovery change approached methods to connecting corporates and SMEs for open innovation? So I don't know if perhaps you want to kind of talk about any sort of practical things that have happened over this. Maybe you can even reference Boots, perhaps, in the way that we've been able to keep helping them innovate through this time.
Yes, I think it's been an interesting journey over the past few months for ourselves, and also working with our clients, because actually I think by default, so we have an office space, and we've been in an office for years together, but actually we work kind of remote by default, I suppose. So we've been able to adapt quite quickly to the work ourselves, and then bring that to the clients as well. So working on a challenge like the Walgreen Boots project that you just touched on there, John, actually we found that we've been able to carry on unassisted. I mean, the technology is there, and hopefully, if anything, it's proven that given kind of such a chaotic period, if everybody's had to be able to change the way they run their business within the space of a couple of weeks, actually, if we can take a bit of time and put some more planning in place there, that technology is there for us to be able to recover from this really quickly, I think. And I think that approaches and methods don't necessarily have to change. If anything, it's just flagged up that actually some of the processes that we had previously perhaps weren't as strong as they should have been. So using online project management tools and keeping things documented there, all that kind of boring stuff, if you like, it just becomes, it shines a light on the fact that it's so much more important.
Fantastic, great, that's really good. Yeah, do keep questions coming. One of the things I guess I've seen that you've done kind of exceptionally well, but also you picked up on, but it'd be good to a bit more about it. Is you talked about embedding those corporates within your team, and I think that's, I mean, there's lots of reasons why you've been really successful. That seems to me to be a real key one. I don't know if you can talk to us a little bit about how that embedding team members has worked. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, it's been critical, I think, to the success of any project we've worked on. We found that the closer the project, the better things go. And actually, we do by using a methodology called well management method. Works in 2 weeks to deliver working software into the hands of users, taking feedback from key stakeholders along the way. So throughout the project that we've done for the yard management, the Nestle team and their logistics partner as well, XPO, two or three members each have joined in with the team. Every 2 weeks we meet and we talk about the project as a whole. It's not a status update in a traditional sense, but it's about looking at the software that people are using at the moment and working out how we can change things to make it slightly smoother. And that's been key. It's about keeping those lines of communication as open as possible. I think as soon as you increase the length between contact with the teams, that's when you kind of stray into this situation where you end up with these large RT projects that are just doomed to fail because they start out with a large specification, a team goes away for 18 months and then comes back. It's perhaps not fit for purpose. We effectively adopt our clients' teams into our own, and they work side by side as if they would if they're in the same organisation.
Fantastic, thank you. It's interesting, you mentioned just then sort of corporate IT kind of teams then, which are kind of either sort of friend or foe, aren't they, in many environments. You've got a great working relationship with lots of corporate IT departments with your clients, and that's frequently, for all the right reasons, a kind of a big barrier for organisations who have got corporate IT systems. So, look, we don't want people sort of messing about with them or fiddling with things. What have you done in to be able to build those links with corporate IT so they can then help accelerate your projects rather than being sort of kind of gatekeepers to barriers to whatever the metaphor is, stopping you innovate?
I think it's approaching it in a balanced way. So firstly, start small. Every project that we do, no matter how big it ends up, it always starts with a small kind of proof of concept, something that we can deliver within a few weeks and prove to people that actually, yes, the security's there, it's robust, and it works. All those kinds of tick boxes, if you like, that the larger corporate IT departments might be looking for. So deliver something small. You prove value quite early to the business, but then you also prove technical capability as well. And then from that, really also looking at our own processes. So I think that smaller organizations do have to accept that there are accreditations and things that are out there that you do need to aspire to get. So ISO 27001 and any kind of GDPR, those kinds of cyber essentials, those kinds of things. I think they're essential really to kind of prove your worth, and they can to be cumbersome to smaller businesses. But actually, I think there's a meeting in the middle really there. It's start small, adopt their processes where it makes sense, and never be afraid to push back, I suppose.
Fantastic. So if corporate IT hasn't sucked all the energy out of your project, you then need to move on and get paid or go through procurement or something. So how have you guys are kind of agile methodology companies are used to buying waterfall stuff. How have you navigated that sort of procurement side of things?
Again, I suppose it's about taking baby steps. If anything, we've just learned over the last few years that trying to go big bang with these projects and trying to convince somebody that they need to run in a more agile fashion, or actually you don't necessarily know exactly what you're getting at the end of it. We just know that a problem will be solved. I think the way to get around that is to prove that you can fix a problem that you've set out to do early on. So again, that's where this proof of concept phase, or on a slightly larger scale, what we call an MVP, a minimum viable product. It's a short few months worth of work where we come in and fix a problem. And that normally is more traditional kind of waterfall, fixed specification, fixed set of deliverables. We take that approach. And then as things progress, we actually see that the teams embedded in the projects themselves, because we still run them in the agile fashion, the teams embedded in it start to understand the terminology, start to build trust with us, and then they can kind of go and fight that battle a little bit.
Fantastic. That's great. We've got another question from Jenny. So how do you ensure corporate relationships have longevity and build on that initial MVP project? So how do you get that long-term relationship right? So.
Yeah, I think it's having that kind of traditional project management approach at the start of the project. It's looking at it from their point of view. What are the KPIs? What are the business outcomes that we want? Think big picture at the start, and try to think about all of the boil it down to 2 or 3 core deliverables and core KPIs. Sorry. And go from there. And we found that actually once you've proven that you can consistently check the box on a couple of them, that people start thinking more about what's possible. As soon as you can see that things are possible in a fairly short period of time, we just kind of build on that really. So they're not always kind of long term. We're not always kind of fully embedded into the teams, but we just find that it breaks down that traditional kind of project view of different phases. So there's not a phase 1 or a phase 2. It's just here's some software. We're fairly open with people that actually software will never be finished, because there will always be somebody that wants something new adding, and to kind of embrace that to a certain extent. It doesn't always go down well, but again, that's where you have to build up that relationship early on and get some internal champions. So actually with the Nestle project, I think a great testament to the work that the team have done is earlier on in the year, we were invited to their internal Supplier of the Year awards. So we were kind of sat there with like the likes of Deloitte just across the road from us. And I think that showed to us, actually, I think we're onto something here, because I think that there is that gap that we can fill, and that other small organizations can come along and fill, because we're able to deliver something within 9 months for a fraction of the budget, I'm sure, and get some clear results.
Fantastic. Wow, that's great. I've just noticed this sort of time's flown and we're at 4 o'clock, so we'll probably wrap it up. But just say massive thanks, Matt. Yeah, thanks for taking the time. I know you've been really busy recently, but thanks for taking the time to share some of those stories. I'm sure I won't be stitching you up if I say that. I'm sure you won't mind if people want to contact you or get in touch with any sort of other questions. If we can help facilitate that if you've got any questions or want to see some case study projects or something. So yeah, thank you, Matt. Thank you to everybody that's joined us today for this session. We really appreciate you taking part in it, and we look forward to seeing you at sessions later in the day. So thank you, Matt. Thank you, everybody else, and catch you soon. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
All right.